Welcome back to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. I am Dan Siegel, today joined by Neil Pierre-Louis, UNC alumni. Professionally, he is the former director of baseball analytics at North Carolina and now working for the Boston Red Sox. On Twitter, you may know him for his infectious personality as he takes us through the emotions of being a UNC diehard as well. But today we're talking UNC hoops. The Tar Heels are now in year 4 of the Hubert Davis era. They are 13-9 on the season. They rank outside of the top 40 in KenPom and Torvik. They are not, in my opinion, looking like a tournament team at the moment, and the toughest part of their conference schedule, I should say, is ahead. So, Neil, my first question to you is very simple. What is your overall grade on the season so far? Are you giving this an F, or are you going to be a little bit generous?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm saying D minus right now, and I fear after this Duke game, it's probably going to be an F. Which I guess in hindsight, like a lot of people were concerned about the bigs issue that we have, but I feel like coming off of last season, everyone was really optimistic with Hubert and the roster, and I mean even after the tournament we played in Hawaii, like I thought we'd be rolling. We had some close games against some really good teams, and it just has not rebounded at all. So D minus for sure.
Okay. So a little bit above an F, but obviously not really what you were looking for. I want to know really your diagnosis of what is wrong with this team. Obviously, they're underperforming their talent level. RJ Davis, in particular, has taken a major dip in production. His scoring average is nearly 3 points down from last year. His shooting percentage from three is nearly 10 percentage points down from last year. And the transfer class has certainly been underwhelming. So how would you sum this up? Is it more of a on-court coaching issue? Is it a personnel issue, which obviously does attribute back to the coach? But what do you think the main issue is, or is it just a combination?
Yeah, I think you put it nicely. Like I think it's a combination of quite literally everything. Like it doesn't help that one of the like our biggest transfer portal acquisition, like Cade Tyson, is. I mean, he's playing like 1-2 minutes a game. I mean, obviously he had his opportunities, but he hasn't played well. And like not having a big is just like I mean, it's such a big issue. Like we played like the Stanford game, like, and I mean, I'm not saying they're a terrible team, but like I think we're clearly like the more talented team, but like we just got like killed inside. Like it was just I feel like every my friends and I were saying this, but every like defensive possession is just like 4v5. Like it's crazy. And I generally think like if we just had, I mean, literally if we get that guy from Stanford or I don't know, just any big in the portal, like I think I'm not saying his team, is like a top five or top 10 team, but I think they're definitely a tournament team. And then it's coaching as well. Like you look at all the close quad one losses they've had, and they all have something similar, which is we didn't score for like the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game, and that goes back to even some losses from last year. Like I think something similar happened in the Alabama game and the NC State game, the NC State AC tournament final. And then 2023 was the same thing. Um, and it's like, it's so frustrating as a fan because, like, last night, that Pitt game, I'm watching it and I'm like, I'm literally thinking, like, we're down one. I'm like, this game's over. We're not going to score for the next 2, 3 minutes. And is exactly what happened. Like, Lubin misses, like, that basket. And I'm just like, that's the game right there. Like, so, yeah, I'd say combination of all those things, but I don't know. It sucks because I generally feel like you fix all those issues with a center, but and that's the worst part. It's not like this is pro sports where we can just go out and be like, all right, let's go acquire this guy. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, hold tryouts on campus for a center? Like, it's not how it works. So
Yeah, there's no trade deadline to, pay some prospects and, boost your roster that way. But yeah, I was big on obviously the Cliff Amore train in the offseason. He decided Alabama over North Carolina. I thought that would have been a huge addition for North Carolina, even though he's kind of struggled a little bit to get going. But let's talk about this Hubert Davis thing, because really a trend I've seen throughout the sport is that the disciple model, like promoting your lead assistant to be a successor of a legend, right? It's not typically worked. Tony Bennett, we've seen that with Ron Sanchez. We've seen that with Jay Wright in Villanova. We've seen that with Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. John Shire at Duke may be an exception, but it's just so hard to be bad at that program. I always thought like coaches who do things in a very unique way, it's hard to just replace that and replicate that and just say, okay, I'm gonna do what you did. Do you see that here with like the Roy Williams to Hubert Davis jump? Am I kind of illustrating what the problem is in that respect?
Yeah, I think so. Like I remember when yeah, I'll never forget the day Roy actually retired. It was April 1st, which I still to this day I'm like, why was that the day you chose? But I think it was, yeah, helicopters flying around campus. I was like, all right, this is real. And I remember I wasn't too like keen, like I didn't know really the assistants or like what was going on there. I just remember Brad Stevens' name was floating around, and I was like, I want him. Like, and then we ended up deciding on Hubert, which I was like, honestly, like, yeah, let's keep someone, who's really familiar with the way Roy coached and everything. Like, I was like very open to it. I think actually, like, to start his career, like people were very hard on him, which I didn't agree with, just because it was like that 2022 roster that made the eventually made the Natty. Like that was pretty much like all Roy's players. Like I was like, he kind of needs time to get his own class and everything. And there was definitely some like coaching issues here and there that you saw like with the next season, like not really managing the bench well, like all that. But I really just, it's like it's a personnel issue. And then last season, like I don't know, that's when I really was like, okay, maybe like this is working out. But I feel like with this year, it kind of, and I feel like with the assistant thing, I agree. I think Hubert, if he's gonna stay next season, and this is floated around a lot on Twitter, like I think he needs a general manager. Like I think just the whole transfer portal thing and managing recruiting is kind of maybe too much on him. And I don't obviously know how much he focuses on like actual in-game coaching and stuff, but I feel like right now that's just something that's been like very lacking for us. And it's like you look at the 2023 season, and if UNC wins any of those quad one, quad two games, or just doesn't start as preseason number one, like probably a tournament team, but it's like, I mean, they didn't make it for obvious reasons. And it just goes back to coaching. And yeah, I don't know. I think he needs more help in that aspect. It's a lot. I mean, it's more than just coaching now. I mean, the game's completely different. Um, and I'm not sure, like, obviously it was going that way when he took over for Roy, but it's kind of accelerated. And I'm not sure if not that he didn't sign up for that, but I just feel like he kind of needs some assistance there. So,
I think a lot of coaches could definitely use that. Some are better at roster construction and managing all the different, duties of a head coach that is just rose so much over even the last couple of years. Some are better at that than others, but I think that's a general sentiment across the sport. A general manager is beneficial, and in UNC's case, that is especially true. But Hubert Davis, you talked about this, his tenure as a whole started off with a disappointing-ish regular season, and then obviously they went on to be runners up in the March Madness tournament. Then they don't make the tournament the following year. Last year was maybe the year where people started to become optimistic. They have a great regular season, make the Sweet 16, and now there's this season. So if you're evaluating Hubert's tenure as a whole, do you think it's tournament, he stays, not tournament, he goes? Do you think it's more than that? Like, what do you think is the barometer for him to get to next season?
yeah, I think everyone's trying to figure that out. And I think it is more than that just because, like, now with Caleb Wilson, it's like, I think that just throws another factor into it, right? Like, I don't think this team will make the tournament. Um, and if that were to happen, I think the seat will obviously the seat is hotter than it's ever been, but I think that'll truly cement it. But I wonder if like Bubba and like the athletic department, they're thinking like, all right, we got Caleb. Like I don't know if like that means like a decommitment if someone else comes in, or but I think at the bare minimum they're gonna add like a general manager or something in that regards, because I think like like we can all sit here and be like, yeah, it's the roster, like they don't have a center, but we don't have a center. Like Huber is to blame for that, even though he obviously it's not like they didn't really go into the off season or into the season thinking like, wow, like we're just gonna wing this. Like they tried, but at the end of the day, like I mean everyone tries, right? Like so, but I think yeah, I mean if he makes it, I think they'll stay. It's just tough to evaluate, right? Like if you look at and UNC, I feel like UNC students can probably like feel this the most because I think if you're not like a student, you don't really think about it, but it's like everyone talks about that 2022 season, and yes, I would relive any season like that. Even some parts of it were very painful if you make the national championship, right? But that like I don't really think that run was indicative of his coaching more so than just like they just got really hot and Brady Manick like just playing amazing, playing decent ball on the defensive side of things, and then obviously just scoring a lot. It's like you look at that run and it's like, all right, clearly like a lot of luck involved when you run back like a lot of that roster and they don't make the tournament the next season. And then one thing I feel like that went under the radar last year was like I feel like Hubert would still be getting a lot of heat this year if we had the same performance. But I think last year losing to Bama and also losing to State kind of just made people really forget about that season. Like last year was a great season. Like, and if you look back, it kind of had like a similar issue to start. Like we lost, I think, like four straight quad one games in non-conference play, something like that. And then obviously we ran the table in the ACC in the regular season, beat Duke twice. I think we only lost one or two games there. I think it was Clemson and Georgia Tech, but still like really hard to do no matter how the quality of the ACC is. And it's like I feel like losing to Bama there and State just kind of like people just forgot instantly how good that season was. And now you're back to this, and it's like I don't know. I just feel like the up and down is just not like I saw someone tweeted. It was like Roy when the last time he made the NIT, and obviously the 2020 season ended because of COVID, but they weren't even going to make like I think that team
Yeah,
was too
Duke.
bad for the NIT, but like 2009 they win the Natty, 2010 NIT finals, and then 2011 Elite Eight run. Like there was really no like yeah, it's just not Carolina basketball to have like these ups and downs. And like I'll give Hubert some benefit of the doubt that the game is like very different now with the transfer portal and everything. But it's like I feel like we are like Carolina is one of those blue bloods that should just always ascend whatever
Yeah.
changes to the game happen. Like look at Duke, like they have not like other than that weird and it was a COVID year. Like other than that COVID year, like they're always somewhere like never worried about missing the tournament. And like Kentucky, like these teams, that's where we should be. Like it should never be like a question of like is UNC gonna miss the tournament. So
Yeah,
that
that
was a
was
long rant, but
that was going to be my question though. Like, you're ultimately the University of North Carolina, right? Doesn't matter what era of basketball you're in. You're a blue blood. You're not at a lack of any sorts of resources or money or access to players or coaches. So, yeah, like I mean, just to speak for you, like it's pretty much unacceptable to be at a point where what 3 times in the last 5 years you're fighting for an NCAA tournament spot and hoping to get on the right side of the bubble. So yeah, I think that's totally fair to say. On one hand, you don't want to act all pretentious, high and mighty. On the other hand, that is like North Carolina is not an even playing field with the majority of the country. So that's I think that that's completely fair to say. My last question to you is like let's talk about the rest of this season. Obviously, you guys got Duke this weekend on the road, don't you? So that's I know you've already tweeted some of your thoughts on that Cooper Flag and what he's going to do to your team, but are you a believer in this group? And if maybe you're so, like what has to go right realistically?
yeah, it's funny because the last time I talked in depth about this team was it was before, I think it was right after the Louisville game. And I was like, yeah, I'm a believer. They'll finish like fourth, Like I think they'll get it together. After losing to Stanford and like going to overtime with BC at home, yeah, like I just don't see it. Like, and they still have some opportunities left. Like I don't know if they have Pitt at home, but I know they have Clemson, I think away. Either at home, like that's going to be a game to maybe get back in it. Obviously, you have Duke twice, but like, and that just goes back to the problem. It's like we honestly could, like, I just feel like our guards have to be lights out like every night, and it's just there's too many factors in a game for that. I feel like just to ruin it. Like, yeah, like you mentioned, like RJ's been off like for half of these games. Like even last night, like Elliott played well, but he was in foul trouble like for a lot of the game, and that didn't help out. Yeah, yeah. Like I'm looking at this. Yeah, so we got Duke
Zoom in a little
on the
bit.
road. That's gonna take like a legit like with how big their team is and good defensively. This is what I said to my friend. I was like, Duke will score at least 80 points that game. It's up to us if we can do that. And I do not see a world where that happens. And some of those baskets from Duke are just like I can't even think like when we played Bama, I think they had like 10 alley oops, bro. Like it was just I feel like the same thing's gonna happen with Duke. Like Pitt at home. I mean, hopefully we can win that. But I mean, I don't know. Went to OT with Boston College at home. Like Clemson away is tough. Like it's just a lot of these games, and you look at the games before. Like even some of these wins have been one possession, like really tight, and it's like, and then that's not even including like you drop a game to like a team like Florida State or you drop it if you drop a game to Miami, like we're gonna have to win like the ACC tournament at that point. That's a really bad Q4 loss to have. Like I just feel like and it's just so annoying because the opportunities were. It's not that they were there, and like I don't really count Bama as an opportunity. Like we were not winning that game, but like Florida, Michigan State, a lot of these games were like they're there for the taking. Even last night, Louisville like super close. So yeah, I think it's an NIT team, and I really hope and that's the problem. Like they can't decline that NIT bid, and I feel like Hubert won't. I feel like part of that decision was that they were preseason number one, but we we can't like we're not right now as a program over the last what 8 or not 8 years, but the last 6 years since that 2019 season, we have not shown that we are above playing in something like that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I know you were not a fan of when they opted out of the NIT a couple of years ago, and I definitely wasn't. So hopefully they would accept a bid and just, you know, show a sign that ultimately you're disappointed, but at least grateful to be accepting of postseason basketball. But yeah, I mean that will pretty much wrap it up. If you have any other comments to make on North Carolina basketball, I'll give you the floor. But
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was very critical, but you know me, I'll be watching every game, whether that's good or bad from here on out. I'll be watching Saturday. Not looking forward to that game, but you never know. That game is always really weird. I will
true.
say though, when we did beat them in Cameron, I was actually like very confident about that. Weirdly enough, this one I am not. So we will see.
Yeah, I think a lot will have to go right, but it is a rivalry game. I think there's something to be said about this rivalry and just how ridiculously close it's always been. But yeah, that will do it for today's edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. Appreciate Neil for your time for hopping on. Be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Follow us on the socials. You can see that on the bottom of the screen. But yeah, that once again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and take care.